So I like to use this analogy whenever starting texture and shading because it's super crucial and it'll save you a ton of headache down the road. So before we get into this, the analogy here is what comes first, the chicken or the egg? Does the egg make the chicken and the chicken makes another egg? Or does, the chicken make that first egg and then the egg makes more chickens, right? So very, very common analogy. How this applies to the fundamentals of texture and shading is what comes first, light or the material? And, this is something that I don't really remember, but I know a lot of my students, this is a very common question that they have. And I didn't really understand this until way, way, way down the road of getting into CG. And it caused a lot of headaches down the road. If you've never asked yourself this, why this is important, this next slide will kind of open up your mind to that. So in here we have, what is red? The shader or the light? One of these have a white shader. One of these has a red shader. What's going on, right? Pretty interesting stuff. So let's check out the actual scenes. So in this scene, we have a red shader and then we have a white light. So this white right here is going to be white. In this other scene here, the light is red and then the material is white. So this is a really, really common problem because whenever you're developing textures and shaders, you need to know the color temperature of your lights. You need to have a very neutral lighting setup. I'm going to show you guys a production example. This is one of the bigger projects that I remember working on. This was something like 2010, I believe. And it was one of my first really, really big projects. And we really kind of stumbled on this and we really kind of fell flat on our face, and I'll explain why. So each one of these characters, each one of these props, each one of these, elements are built in their own individual scene. They're modeled, they're textured in a small scene by themselves. And then whenever we get to the assembly process, we bring everything together and then we light them together, right? The problem is that we all didn't start, we had a team of probably 7 texture and shading artists on this project. And we all started with our own look development lighting rigs, our own lighting rigs that we were developing our shaders under. And this became super problematic because some people started with a sunset, some people started with a neutral studio lighting, some people started with a magic hour lighting rig. And what that does is it makes all of your textures and shaders have a baked in color temperature to them. And this was super problematic. And, it wasn't until a few years into working that the teams that I was working for at the time that we really kind of got our stuff together and started ironing this out. The solution to this is, in this particular case, we just rendered a bunch of mats out because we couldn't go back and fix them, and we had to fix them all in compositing, and it was a huge disaster. It goes to show you how much professionals know what they're doing, right? So, it doesn't matter how far you get, you're going to make mistakes like this. But hopefully this will save you guys a lot of the pain that I know for sure that I went through. So the solution to this is really simple. We just work with a calibrated lighting, a lighting condition that is known and neutral and doesn't have any color temperature. And that is going to be consistent for all of our assets. So ideally what you want to do is develop all of your textures and shaders for the end of time under one lighting scenario. And that way all of your textures and shaders will work consistently under every lighting condition that you ever throw at it because they will all have been developed under the same lighting conditions. At the studio SAP that I was working at, whenever we did this, we immediately implemented this after this project, and every asset from then on was consistent. We can throw them in any project and they were light very consistently, and we didn't have this problem. So pretty confusing stuff. We'll get into how to actually set this up in the next chapter.